So this is a reading vlog, in case you couldn't tell, and I'm basically just going to read maybe 3 or 4 books, and I'm going to pick those books based on a random number generator. So you can see most of my books here. The top up to here is books I've read, and then these bottom 3 shelves are all books I haven't read. So in an effort to tackle my TBR, I've started doing this thing where I use a random number generator to pick what book I'm going to read. I have mixed success. I've had some 5-star books and I've had less than 3-star books. I just thought I'd take you along for the journey to see what books I end up with, what I feel about them, and this is just going to be like a vlog style video, so I'll just update you when I feel like it. I'll update you when I've read some of the book, and we'll just go from there. And I have a grand total of 227 unread books. 227. As someone who typically reads over 100 books a year, that is like 2 years worth of unread books. I could survive for 2 years purely off of my unread physical TBR. We're just gonna give it a go, see what comes up, and see if we get a success. I'm gonna record my screen and go to a random number generator. So I've put in 227, 1 to 227. I'm gonna generate 40. Okay, so I know I have 32 books over on my little shelf over there, and the way that I do this is I just go along shelf by shelf all the way to the end, from right to left, and I count that way. So 40 is quite near the beginning, so I have 32 over there, so I'm just going to start counting from 33 from here. And the book is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I don't know anything about this book. I couldn't tell you. My assumption is that it is at least mildly fantasy, because I know Olivia Blake wrote The Atlas Six, and that has some fantasy stuff in it. So I'm assuming it has some fantasy in it. I'm gonna look it up on Storygraph. Nope, no fantasy. Doesn't say fantasy. Okay, so it's a fiction, literary romance, emotional, reflective, and medium paced. I'm gonna give it a go. I know a lot of people really love this book. I've seen quite a lot of people rate this quite highly. I really love the cover with the bees and the gold. I think it's really pretty. I like the colour. So I am tentatively optimistic about this book. Yeah, this is the first book of the video. Okay. So I've been reading Alone with You in the Ether. I'm 106 pages in. I now know what it's about. It's about 2 miserable but interesting people who have a chance encounter. They decide the other person is interesting, and so they agree to have 6 conversations with each other, including the first one that they had when they first met. There's a little kind of prologue where one of the characters is trying to figure out at what point their relationship changed their life, and then you have kind of an introduction to the both of them and their first meeting. And then I'm now at the point where they have 1 conversation left out of the initial 6. So you have Regan, who comes from wealth, has a history of mental illness, and is kind of just going through the motions of life, trying to live spontaneously, but not really enjoying herself. And then you have Aldo, who is a mathematician who cements himself in routine, right? Like his entire life has become about maintaining his routine. And so they meet and they just kind of talk, and it's kind of interesting, right? Like it's not boring. It's very soft. Everything is kind of met with this softness to it. Just there's no high emotion, there's no intense feelings. They just kind of have this softness towards each other. But while it's soft, it's also very deep. They're talking about things that have really impacted their life. They're talking about things that have made big changes to the way they perceive themselves or the way they perceive the world, and they're just kind of sharing that with each other. They both have this curiosity about each other that seems to drive them to want to spend time together and to want to get to know each other better. My favourite scene has been when they go to church. I feel like it's got this section where you really feel like they're starting to get closer to each other, that it's more than just mild curiosity and more of this kind of intense yearning for understanding. Because I think that's really, at the moment, that's what both of them are looking for. They both feel kind of isolated and apart from the rest of the people in their lives, and so although they've kind of squashed it, I feel like they both have this deep, intense need for being understood and being accepted for who they are. I think it's interesting so far. I'm not sure that I would say I'm loving it. We've just seen glimpses into them. Like, we're trying to understand them as they're trying to understand each other. I'm definitely interested in keeping reading. I had to like stop myself from reading more before talking to you. Happy. I'm happy. I'm happy. You did see her. She's just there. Okay, 200 pages in. I just want to keep reading it. I don't really know how to describe what's going on because stuff is happening but also nothing's happening. It is still just this like exploration of people. I feel like it's focusing more on Regan than Aldo and what she's going through. She has a little bit of a kind of messier life that she has to untangle, and there's a topic in here that is quite an important topic to me. It's something I have experience with, and I just want to see how it's handled by the end of the book. It's still good. I think I am a little bit in love with Aldo, but I don't know, I'm still not loving it. I'm not hating it. I'm interested to see where it goes because I do feel quite conflicted about it at the moment. It's very beautifully written. If I was an annotator, this would be an annotating book. I'll let you know. I'll let you know how it goes. I'll let you know. Okay, I finished it. Try and talk about it without crying. This was really beautiful, right? Like, it's this beautiful mix of personalities. It's a beautiful mix of mathematics and art. Like, it really is a love story. Like, it's just all about love, right? Like, it's about the sensation of being in love and falling in love and fighting for love. I am gonna give it 4 stars because there were points, like maybe for about 50 pages kind of towards the end, where I felt like it was a bit repetitive. I got a little bit bored of it, but I think the overall story of this is just so beautiful and heartwarming. It has some really good mental health representation, I think, and does a good job of showing how people can be loved even when they struggle. This isn't a book of misery, right? Like, you're with characters who are going through things, but it's not a miserable book. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it. I really liked it. Very happy that I read it. Very happy that it came up. And so it's time to pick the next book. It's now going to be out of 126, and it generated 177. So I'm gonna count that many books and then come back to you. I don't know how I feel about this. I think I've been nervous of Night Powers for quite a long time because so many people love it, and I did read like 5 pages of it one time when I was locked out of the house, and it didn't I know it's like impossible, but the book didn't grab me within 5 pages. What can I say? It's a chunk, and the writing is really small, and it feels like an intense topic, so I feel like it's going to be a bit more of a struggle to read. But I'm excited. I'm nervous, but I'm excited. I just want to love it. I want to love it, and I don't know if I will. I'm reading Lighthouse, and I have been for a number of days now, which is quite unusual for me. I'm really struggling to get into it. So I'm about 100 pages in. I've decided to start swapping between the physical book and the audiobook, sometimes doing them both at once, sometimes one or the other. There is nothing but pure will keeping me going, right? Like, I know that a lot of people love this book, so it has to get better. I know that a lot of people were really excited about the sequel, so it has to get better. And I'm not saying that it's bad, I'm just saying that I'm really struggling to pay attention to it. It's got 2 timelines, and I'm very clearly interested in one of the timelines over the other. I find Alex, the kind of one of the main characters of this book, to be quite a draining perspective to read from. She's at Yale, she's been taken there for a specific reason, but at the moment it's really focusing on her struggles with just being there, with being a student, with trying to balance that with her kind of extracurricular activities, with falling behind in class. Like, this was never a path she envisioned for herself, so she's never been in a situation where she's had to apply herself in this manner. So she's really struggling, and she's lacking sleep, and she's miserable, and she has a couple of friends, but one of the important people in her life is missing, and she has all this trauma which we're seeing glimpses of, and so it feels like quite a draining character to read from. You just want things to go well for her, but you know from the prologue, from the very beginning, the stuff is only gonna go downhill from here. Like, there is no upswing to this. She ends up injured and alone, so it's just a question of how do we get from this miserable point to that miserable point. I'm 100 pages in, so I have 350 to go, and I'm going to try my hardest to finish this today. I think that I just need to 100% put myself in a focused state and try and get through this, and hope that my interest in it picks up a little bit from where it is at the moment, because at the moment it's pretty much 0. Maybe a 1. I'd give this a 1 for interest. I'm vaguely interested. I've made it to chapter 14, i.e. just over halfway. I can see a little bit of where the plot is going. I can, like, there's actual plot stuff happening. Still no idea how we get to the prologue, how we get to her being injured and alone. It's becoming a little bit like murder mystery, which I guess is something that should appeal to me. I like mystery. The audiobook is great. Stephen King said this was impossible to put down, and I just can't, I just don't agree, right? Like, every couple of chapters I'm like, I could stop here. I could stop here and not pay attention to anything else. I'd be fine with that. Like, the kind of action that's happening is more interesting, right? And Alex is being a little bit more of a badass, which is always fun. She's like got her goal now, and she's trying to figure out how to get there, and she's not putting up with any bullshit that happens on the way. So that's more interesting than just kind of being about her sad existence. And I think if the action picks up, then I think I'll really enjoy it. But it just feels quite slow to me. Like, I just want the answers, and I'm not necessarily enjoying the experience of getting to those answers. I mean, I still think it's like, so far it's like a 3. Like, I don't hate this book, I'm not hating it, and I realise that my mood has had a impact on how fast I've read this book, but it's just not gripping me. I'm not loving the storytelling. I'm only just starting to like the characters, and I'm hoping that it improves. If it gets really great from here on, then it could be a 4, but at the moment it's looking like a 3. I think 3 stars. It's late, so I think I'm going to talk to you about this tomorrow. Just know, while it got better, it didn't get good enough. I want to pick another book, right? It's late, but when I wake up, I want to have something to read. So we're now out of 225, and I hope it's a low number so I don't have to count loads of books. But we're just gonna go for it. 164. If it's another Dark Academia book, I think I might lose my shit. I want something fun. I want something fun. I don't think I'm gonna get something fun. Okay, I'll be back. I'm gonna get the book. Okay. It is in fact The Dead Romantics by Ashley Boston. Everyone raves about Ashley Boston, right? Like, I think her most popular one is The 7-Year Slip, and Novel Love Story just came out and people don't seem to love that. But I haven't actually heard much about The Dead Romantics. In my head, it's a story where she falls in love with a ghost. So I'm like, how can that have a happy ending? If he's dead, then surely that is difficult, right? Like, a bit tough to love a ghost. I'm really excited to read this. I'm just really happy with this. I hope I like it. I hope I like it. Okay. It's the next day, so we're gonna catch up. I told you yesterday I finished Ninth House. I did give it a 3-star. I think I will read Hellbent at some point. While there are a couple of characters that I really liked in this book, I didn't love Alex, and I think that's my biggest problem with this book. There's a lot of trauma behind Alex, and I feel like it wasn't given the kind of time it deserved. Like some kind of interesting things about the book. There's a lot of focus on architecture, which is kind of interesting. There's a lot of focus on the kind of murder mystery aspect of this, which in theory I should like. It felt like the cast of characters were so small and you didn't get to know them. There were only a couple of people who would have really impacted you if it had been them. And because they were so important to Alex, you kind of didn't expect it to be them. All the different things she was looking into kind of wove together into an interesting thing. And like I said, I did read a big chunk of it in one go. So I think I definitely found the latter half of the book more interesting than the first half of the book. But it just didn't pull it up to a point where I loved it. It still felt like not the book for me, which is unfortunate. Like, the first half was really a struggle, and the second half, while it got better, it didn't get better enough. It was still just like fine and intriguing, but it wasn't like, oh, amazing, I loved it, that was so great. It just stayed in a kind of like, yeah, I'm entertained, this is good enough. So that's why I've landed on a 3. And then you saw that I picked out The Dead Romantics. I'm chapter 6, about 50 pages into it. You've met Florence, who is the main girl. You've met her life. You've understand her past a little bit. You understand that she has the ability to see ghosts. So in that, they're quite similar. It's also given an insight into like the world of publishing, which I think is pretty interesting. Books about authors are always kind of intriguing to me. I want to enjoy this book today. I want to have a nice cozy read, so I've set up my room to be as cozy as possible. I have candles going. Let's show you candles. I have tea. Guess I'll update you when I'm a bit more of the way in. Okay. I'm nearly halfway through. Maybe 40% of the way through. I get it now. I get where we're going. I get what we're doing. Not even 10 pages after the last time I spoke to you, something happened, and nearly cried, nearly wept, nearly had an emotion. But yeah, I get what's happening now. I think I can guess how it's going to end. It's the only thing that makes sense in my brain as to how we could get to a happy ending, right? Like, I assume it has a happy ending. They call it a rom-com, so to me that implies a happy ending. A romance normally has a happily ever after. I'm not going to tell you what I think, just in case I'm right. I like Florence. She's kind of fun and snarky. I feel like the characters a little bit are inconsistent sometimes. They seem to change their personality quite frequently, depending on what the author wants to get out of the scene. Specifically Ben. Ben is her editor and the person that she's seen the ghost of. Like, they started off very jokey and then he turned into a bit of a hard ass, and then they had like an encounter at a bar and that was quite like interesting and heated, and now he's a ghost. He just feels very like, woe is me, as expected. Like, I'm dead, I'm sad, makes sense. But it just feels a little bit different from his personality at the beginning, where he was quite like witty and snappy, and now he feels softer somehow. And kind of the same with Florence. Like, at the beginning she felt kind of floundering and a bit unsure of herself, and now that she's having more conversations she feels a bit more like the opposite. Like, she feels more snappy and more bantery is how I would describe it. Like, it feels like she has some good banter going on. So that's why the characters feel a little bit inconsistent to me. I didn't realise it was going to have like a small town setting, but at the moment it's she's back in her hometown after something happened with her family, and it's quite a small town, so it's got that kind of small town vibe going on, which I do like in a book. It's had its moments, but it's overall quite fun. I think there's quite a depressing topic which is being handled very delicately. I like the kind of poetic language that's being used in here. The descriptions of emotions are particularly good, I think. I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. Four stars. 4 stars. Maybe 4.5. Okay, let's talk about it. I really enjoyed this book. I've heard people describe Ashley Poston as more like literary fiction with a subplot of romance, and I don't think I agree with that. I think the romance in this was an important part of the plot. It was the main plot. There just also is a really strong plot around her family. After that first scene, the characters felt pretty cemented, but I do stick by the fact that in the first scene with her editor, I feel like they both kind of had a slightly different personality to the one they display throughout the rest of the book. I really enjoyed it. It was very touching. It was very emotional. My battery died. It's close to being more than a 4. I was right about the end. I did see it coming. I wonder if you didn't see it coming, maybe it would be more of like a, oh my gosh, how amazing. But to me it was the only thing that made sense. So yeah, 4 stars, really enjoyed it. So that's it, that's the whole thing. We read 3 books from the random number generator, 2 4 stars, 1 3 star. I had a great time. I do want to do some like mood reading now, so I think I'm gonna do a little reading vlog based on the mood I'm in. But this has been a great way for me to read books that I'm nervous of, or read books that are a little bit outside my comfort zone, or to read books that I wouldn't get around to for a while. So it's been a really fun way for me to pick my TBR, but I am now ready for something new. But thank you for being here, thank you for watching me ramble on about books I read, and I will see you in the next one.